Welcome to episode 249 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Bradley Stryker, who is an actor as well as a writer, director, and producer. He just did a really cool horror thriller film called Land of Smiles. We talked through that project and exactly how he was able to get it made. It's another great example of a guy going out there and making things happen for themselves, so stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 249. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. On The Pinch, the crime thriller feature film, which I'm finishing up, we re-output the final version of the film, this time hopefully without any dropped frames. So I put that on a hard drive and shipped it back to the aggregator. We're then going to prepare to release it on iTunes, Amazon, and the various VOD platforms. They do have to go through with this new version of the film that we've produced. They do have to go back through the QC process. Hopefully it will pass, and then we'll get our official release date. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks I will have an official release date for The Pinch. If you're interested in seeing the Pinch now, I have released it through sellingyourscreenplay.com. You can go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/thepinch, and the word The Pinch is all lowercase and all one word. I've also given you the option when you buy it through SYS of buying the 3-hour webinar I did on the making of The Pinch, where I go through every aspect of how I made this film, from writing the script, how to write a micro-budget screenplay, to raising the money. I did a Kickstarter for this, as well as just got some private equity investors. I go through all of that process, through pre-production, how I got the crew together, how I did all the casting, and then production, post-production. All the aspects of making this film are covered in that webinar. So if you're looking to try and do your own micro-budget film, I think this would be incredibly helpful for you. Again, you can make the purchase or learn more about all of this by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/thepinch. Again, it's sellingyourscreenplay.com/thepinch. And I'm still polishing up my mystery thriller script, which I'm hoping to shoot early next year. I'm in the process of raising the money, which is always just a tough thing. I have a lot of verbal commitments at this point, and I'm basically just trying to get the money into the bank account so that we can really start pre-production. A lot of filmmakers, they start pre-production before they have all the money, which sometimes can light a fire under those filmmakers to go out and really push harder to raise the money. But that's not really my style. I like to make sure everything is in order so I can really concentrate on the producing of the film, the directing, the writing, the creative aspects, all of that stuff. And if I'm worried about raising more money while I'm going through that process, I think it will just really it'll hurt me just emotionally and creatively to be able to make those decisions if I'm constantly having to figure out where I'm going to get those next dollars to keep production going. So I'm going to have all the money pretty much raised in the bank, and that's basically what I did with The Pinch. I did the Kickstarter. I raised the money from some, again, private equity, friends, family, and my own money. I put it in the bank. So I knew I had all that money ready to go, and then there was never an issue of me trying to figure out, well, how am I going to raise this money or that money? Obviously, you do have to stay on budget. You have to budget yourself and be very, very strict on not going over budget. There is definitely always those times where it's easy to throw money at a problem, and you really have to resist those so that your movie does stay on budget, because no matter what level you're at in terms of the producing, things can always get out of hand, and you can always spend more money money, and you always feel like, just a little here, a little there, and that's what adds up and gets these films over budget. So I want to have my money in the bank ready to go. I'm pretty good about staying on budget, but then I just don't have to worry about it. I can go into pre-production, really concentrate on the script, on the casting, getting the crew together, the locations, and then getting into production, and not constantly being, sidetracked. And it's just, a lot of it's just an emotional sort of aspect of just, you constantly have to be thinking about that, and it just weighs on you, whereas you should be spending your time at that point on the creative decisions, the script, the story, the acting, the casting, all of that stuff, because that's really what's going to make a better film. But if you're constantly just thinking, man, where am I going to get that next $5,000 or $10,000 to keep production going, it can really be a drain. So anyways, that's the plan. We'll see if it all comes together. So that's the main thing I'm working on this week. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer, director, producer, actor Bradley Stryker. Here is the interview. Welcome, Bradley, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like a lot of people, I think I was interested in the entertainment business probably since I was a little kid. I love movies. I grew up on movies. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna shy away from dating myself. I'm 41, so I remember getting the first VCR. Mm-hmm. I remember watching. I don't even know what the Jaws, Goonies, like everything in the VHS. We had 10 VHS, right? So I watched every one of those movies 397 times. Mm-hmm. I've seen Girls Just Want to Have Fun more times than I want to admit because I have a sister. But so I started with love of film, and then I went into all other different sorts of things growing up. I was big into sports and stuff. And then when I was in college, I was a sports and nutrition major at my 6th college, San Diego State University. I hopped around a bit. I paid for college. Don't get it wrong. It wasn't on my parents' bill. It was me. Uh-huh. I was at San Diego State University, and it's a long story, but I tried to do a year and a half of classes in a year because I wanted to be done with school. So my schedule was very strict because I also had a job. I had to work at night. I was working in a restaurant like 30 hours a week. So one of my classes got canceled, so I had to find something specifically for 1 hour, and I had one elective left. So I stumbled into a drama class. Huh. I started as an actor, and I went into a freshman drama class, and I was a senior. Then I went into a freshman drama class. And teachers you can't just crash a drama class because there's 300 people trying to crash it. I stayed there for like 6 weeks. I wasn't even enrolled in the class, and the teacher looked at me. She goes, "You're not even in the class." And I was like, "I think I will be soon." And she finally let me in. But that was, to make another long story short, I did a monologue as my final in that class. Maybe it was my midterm even. And it was a really emotional monologue, and I was hooked because I was like, wow, this is something I've never been allowed to do before. Kind of tap into the emotional side of being a human being. Because, I mean, I think like most of us, we're taught that that's something you do in private or you just don't do it at all. Mm-hmm. And so that hooked me. I graduated from college, moved to LA. And I was lucky enough to be a while ago, so I already had a commercial agent, already had that stuff going. And then,
how did you get those agents? If all you had was one drama class, how did you get the commercial agent?
I was attractive enough to do some print work in New York, to do some modeling stuff in New York. And by that, communication, I went to New York, didn't get any jobs modeling, did some featured background work, and then did some television commercial stuff. Went back, that was for the summer between junior and senior year of college. Then went back to San Diego State to finish college, and had found an agent in San Diego, and a print agent. And we did some commercial stuff. She partnered with an LA agency called Osbrink Talent, who at the time, or still to date, is like the creme de la creme for kids. They're a very big kids agency. And they had a commercial apartment for adults. And so I just started working with them from San Diego. I used to drive when I was in college from San Diego to LA for commercial auditions. And any actors out there that are listening to this are going to know that that's ridiculously insane. I would drive like 3.5 hours, wait for half an hour, and then I'd go into my, Playtex commercial and do a little song and dance for 3 minutes and drive 3.5 hours back to San Diego to go back to school.
Were you starting to book some of those things?
No,
No.
no, bro. I was doing, when I got a call back, it was like there was a party. You know what I mean? And all of that meant was I had to drive again 3.5 hours for the callback. And instead of it being just one person, like 5 or 10 of us, there was another 80 people at the callback. Didn't get those either.
No.
I was lucky, though, because a guy at Osbrink was my mentor. His name's Scott Wine. I still like a really good friend now. He mentored me, and he said, it's going to take a while because you don't know what you're doing, but we're going to do this. We're going to go on this ride together. To be honest, if I was being conservative, I had 100, 150 auditions before I booked anything commercially.
Wow.
Once I started working, flash forward to a few years later, bought a house.
Okay.
So it was like it was nothing, and then it was everything all at once. But the time frame of me doing those 150 auditions, I was in acting class 5 days a week.
Okay.
Learning.
Yeah. So now let's talk about some of that transition. So you're booking acting jobs, making a living as an actor. At what point did you decide, okay, I really want to write and direct as well?
There's a very specific story, actually, in regards to this. I wrote my first screenplay in my 20s when I'd been acting for 5 years, and I was like, I want to write something. And I wrote a screenplay, and I had everybody read it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back, I was like, I cringe a bit because I don't even know that it made sense. But it was, I thought it was magic because I had finished a screenplay. Mm-hmm. People read it and never really said anything to me about it, and life went on. Mm-hmm. I then tried to read Story by McKee. I made it halfway through. I closed the book. I remember definitively the day I closed the book halfway through and said, I'm not intelligent enough to be a screenwriter. And I didn't write again for 3 years. Huh. And that was because I'd never read anything. That was the first book I tried to read. And flash forward to I'm in Vancouver working on a TV show. And then I'm in New Mexico working on that same show. And any actors out there will understand this, but you're doing a part on a show where you don't really have a lot to do on the show, but you work a lot. And you're being paid well. So I decided after that show I was going to go on a trip. So I went on like my sort of spiritual trip of whatever it is to find myself in Thailand for 2 months. And when I was in Thailand for 2 months, because I realized I was a pretty miserable guy at the time, I was working as an actor and everything seemed to be going great, but it wasn't enough. I was really bored on set, nothing to do in between, shooting and just a lot of downtime I didn't know what to do with. So I decided I was going to hire myself as a professional screenwriter. And I went home from the trip to Thailand, and I sat down the first day back in front of my computer going, what am I doing? And I was like, I have no idea. Started writing, started reading books, signed up for writing classes. The first 2 years of me writing, I promised myself I'd write 40 hours a week. And I wrote more like 50, 60 hours a week, sat in coffee shops all day long and wrote a lot of garbage, just bad stuff, just getting it all out of my system, studying. And I started the process 10 years ago of writing. I've written a lot since then. I've written 20-something feature films, a bunch of short films. I made a bunch of short films. Ultimately, I found that I like being a writer-director. The thing I think I'm the best at, if I was going to be completely honest, is directing. And that's because I've also been an actor for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I've developed a skill set that is valued by some, not by others, but I really enjoy and love talking to actors and helping them surprise themselves with what they can do, which as an actor, I can tell you, not a lot of directors know how to do. Mm-hmm. And so it's something I really, really love. But ultimately, it's really about storytelling. It's all about storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I've spent 20 years now being a part of storytelling, 10 of those as a writer, as a screenwriter. And they flow back and forth into each other really fluidly. They really do. And it's hard to explain, but I need all of the pieces. I need the acting piece to build the writing piece, to build the directing piece, and it's like this circle that all benefit each other. Mm-hmm. And without having all three, I don't think I'd be as good at any of them. I'm not saying everybody out there needs to do all of it. But what I am kind of one of the things that when I talk to young filmmakers, and especially people that are writers and directors only, I'm like, go take an acting class. And they're like, I don't want to be an actor. That terrifies me. And I'm like, I didn't say you wanted to be an actor. I'm just saying you need to learn what that conversation is about, so that you can then talk to us on set and we can go, oh, wow, I didn't see that. That's a great idea. Because ultimately it makes your screenplay and your movie better when you know how to pull that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the short films that you did. So you're writing this 40 hours a week. Did you start to send out some of those scripts, and at what point did you segue into some shorts?
I think I segued into shorts when I realized that the process of getting a feature made was going to be a long one. And I also realized that I wasn't going to be patient enough to wait for one of those to get made. And, I did something that some people do, some people don't, but I just ponied up my own money. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I want to get these movies made, and this is how I get these movies made. And it basically, the first one I did, I'm turning my phone off, sorry about that. The first one I did was something I, as an actor, really wanted to do. And so it was a situation I'd explored in many acting classes, and I was like, well, I want to do this as an actor. So I wrote a short film about that situation, and I did that. And I hired a director. I wasn't directing yet. And that director then helped me bring it to life with a bunch of people, and I was up in Vancouver at the time. And it was the first kind of experience of going through bringing something from page to screen, and then I got addicted to that, and I was like, well, I love this. I need to keep doing that. It was one of those things where when I saw it actually come to fruition, I was like, well, this is something I have to do. So I then was asked to direct a theater thing, and I decided after that I would direct them as well, and not always act in them. So to be completely honest, it started as an exercise I wanted to do as an actor and a writer, and then it turned into something that I just wanted to do as a writer and a director.
And was your plan then to eventually get to a feature film? You figured I'll do a few shorts and then a feature film, or was you just wanted to explore some things in features with no real plan?
1,000% it was that. Actually, one of the short films that I made was one of the first feature films that I wrote. It was a short version of The Situation.
I see.
And that was the first script, that feature was the first script I ever optioned.
Okay.
And so that one actually ended up coming to fruition. That particular screenplay came to fruition in terms of the option. I think 8 years after I wrote the first draft.
Okay.
50-something%.
So let's dig into Land of Smiles. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick logline or pitch for that film.
Well, I've been to Thailand before. Anybody that else has been to Thailand might understand. People think it's a very scary place. I've been there, and it's not. It's a really fun place. But before I went to Thailand, everybody warned me, including my own mother, that it's a very dangerous place, and she hopes I come back alive kind of thing. And so I decided, I was like, well, what if a young woman went traveling abroad and went to meet her best friend, and this is literally where the idea came from. What if she got a video and an email and her best friend's in the basement with some crazy man in a clown mask and literally says, now we're going to play a game. And the game is we're going to play hide and seek, and you're going to try and find your friend as I drag you through the country of Thailand, toying with you. Part of also what the concept was is the way I shot it is while he's dragging her through Thailand, he's unknowingly to her filming her the whole time as she's toiling with these other two people trying to find her best friend. And to be honest, I can tell you where the inception of the idea came from. I watched a horror film that was done, and it was so easy, and it made a ton of money how they did it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make one of these movies. And I paused this movie, and I wrote the entire outline for the original script of Land of Smiles, literally sitting right there in about 2 hours, based on this fact that it's like, I can go to a foreign country and make guerrilla film a movie. Because at the time, I was still trying to raise money to make my quote-unquote legitimate movies, and it just wasn't working. nobody was wanting to give a first time filmmaker, $100,000, believe it or not. I know.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah. So let's dig into your writing process. Just a couple quick questions to start. Where do you typically write? You mentioned a coffee shop earlier, but what is your typical writing? I guess now you're in a hotel doing an acting gig, so you're writing the hotel, but what's typical for you when you're writing?
My writing schedule has changed over the years, but today my writing schedule is I get up in the morning. So I have a son who's 3 years old, so I get up when he gets up. Usually he's my alarm clock. But sometime between 6 and 7 a.m., say hello to him, give him a kiss. I go sit at a coffee shop for 3 or 4 hours every morning. I usually then have consumed too much caffeine, so I go and exercise and eat. And then I have a little bit of a break during the day, and then I go back to a coffee shop around 3, and I do another 4 hours, maybe some 4 or 5 hours of writing in the afternoon. I try and do 2 sessions, and my daily writing usually is somewhere between 6 and 8 hours of time. Some people think it's too much, and I've been doing it for a decade now. I used to write 12 hours a day. I have no problem. I can't do that anymore. So I imagine in 5 years from now, you're going to hear me. I'll say I write 4 hours a day, and by the time I've been writing as long as Stephen King, I'll do it for 3 hours every morning too. Yeah. But not quite there yet. So
yeah. And what is your compared to like outlining? The outlining stage versus actually open up final draft and writing, dialogue and scene descriptions and stuff like that. How much time do you spend outlining before you're actually in final draft?
Well, I can back this up for 2 seconds. I've read every book. So even though I put down McKee originally, now of course I've gotten through it and another 20 other screenwriting books and taken a bunch of classes and everything. So my actual outlining now is pretty rigorous. So I'll give you an example. I'm developing a TV show with a producer friend who's a writer-producer, and we are, by the time we got to the actual, I'm about there right now. By the time I got to the actual writing of the first draft of the screenplay, now mind you, at this point I've already done like a scene-by-scene outline, but it's not a draft. I wouldn't consider it a draft yet. I have a document that's about 57 pages. That's my prep. But you have to remember I'm an actor. So what I do for each character is stupid insane. So when I'm developing a character, I probably do 3 pages of details on questions I ask myself and answer all these 3 pages of questions on each character. Because before I go to sitting down and writing anything, I want to know who they are, and I want to know their deepest fears. I want to know their favorite book. I want to know the first time they have sex. I want to know what their relationship is with their mom and dad, even if none of it applies. This is all work that I do as an actor. So it might be overkill, sure. But you know what? I also believe to each his own. I'm not telling everybody out there they need to write 57 pages before they do this. What I'm saying is what you need to do is develop a process so the minute you write that first draft, you're writing something that is, I guess for lack of a better way to put it, not a first draft. Listen, all first drafts need work. But my first draft 5 years ago was garbage, like really bad. My first draft now is like I'm only a couple drafts away from something that I would be confident sharing with a professional.
Yeah. How many characters do you do this 3-page of notes on the specific characters? Like how deep do you go? If the person or if the character in the script is only going to have, let's say, one scene where maybe they get 10 or 15 lines, is it only the major 3, 4, 5 characters?
Yeah, I'm not a crazy person.
Okay.
So like in case of the TV show, you have to remember we have it's a TV show, it's an ensemble, so there's a lot of characters.
Yeah.
That's an extreme version. I think for most of my movies, I think I probably have a 30-page document put together, and I only break down either the leads or those supporting leads. So I'm not going to anybody that's going to show up in 1 or 2 scenes. No, I mean I'll do a basic breakdown on them so I know who they are. But no. Because I often find that your leads, your quote unquote, a lot of times your straight man characters are the ones that disappear. And then you have this wild hillbilly show up for one scene and he steals the show because he's so much fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I need to know all those details on the leads so that I can write a straight character that's really multidimensional, that can captivate somebody's attention, be real, all those other things. And then, sometimes they're not quite as flashy on the surface.
And how has your development process looked? You just mentioned that nowadays your first draft, you feel pretty confident about it. But when do you start to send it out, and how does that work? Do you have some trusted writer friends? Do you have some actor friends you get notes from? And then just sort of how does that process work for you?
But it depends where I'm at. So I've worked with, I had a manager I was working with for a while. We were developing stuff together. So for a year and a half, we were developing everything together, so it would go straight to him. I have a couple of producer friends. I don't usually use friends too much. You know what I've used in the last couple of years is, might be a little bit ridiculous, but more than anything else, I've used contests. I'll submit stuff to different contests, and I've been a reader for contests. I was just a reader for a contest. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say, but I was just a reader for a pretty big screenwriting contest. And I know that the process of choosing readers, quote unquote, is not always the best. But I use it as a sounding board to see what people's reaction to the screenplay is. And when I just developed a script, I was on the 5th draft, and I felt really good about it. And so I started sending it out to producers. It's a script that's won a couple contests as well. And I just started getting feedback from them and seeing what works and what doesn't work, ultimately. I mean, but to everybody out there, the thing I think everybody needs to realize is we're in a business of opinions. There is no right answers. There's no wrong answers. So a lot of times people are going to tell you what they think. I've literally had 19-year-old readers try and teach me what screenwriting is about. And you sit there and you listen and you go, well, that's humbling. Thank you. That's really nice of you. I had one person ask me, Save the Cat is my backbone of everything. And this guy reads my script, and he reads the first 5 pages of my script, and he goes, you need to read Save the Cat. And I was like, bro, I've read that book like 6 times. I could write the book now. But it was just really funny feedback because I was like, man, you have to be so humble to do this. Mm-hmm. And ultimately what I do is I take feedback from a lot of contests that I'll enter, especially at the beginning, will be the ones that give you feedback. And I'll take their feedback, process what works for me, what I believe makes sense, use the pieces that work, and throw the rest away. Mm-hmm. And then there will be the 1 or 2 confidant sort of people I have that are screenwriting friends. I don't use actor friends too much because actor friends read it one time and they're like, bro, is that part for me? I'm like, no, we're not there yet. We're not making a movie yet. You know, they're reading it going, like, if you change the lead to a dude, I could totally play her. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that right now. That's not what's happening. I just needed to get your opinion on the story. And they're like, yeah. So there's a fine line.
So you mentioned Save the Cat. I wonder if you could mention some of the books that you've read and you actually would recommend to other writers. I always get emails from writers saying, hey, what books do you think I should read?
Well, I'm going to give you my 3-tier hierarchy. This is how I would say beginning. The 3 books that I think screenwriters should read. How to Make a Good Script Great is the first one. It's a woman who wrote it. I forget her name offhand.
Linda Seeger. Is that Linda Seeger?
Linda Seeger, correct. Okay. How to Make a Good Script Great would be that's like a foundation book. Nuts and bolts of screenwriting, in my opinion. It was super easy to understand. I felt good. I read that book and I was like, I can write. This is exciting. Mm-hmm. Then I read a bunch of other books in the middle, and then I read Save the Cat. I think that would be my second book. So tier 1, How to Make a Good Script Great. Tier 2, Save the Cat. Gives you really wicked idea of structure and a dynamic sort of structure to use, and then make your own. You can't, because there became a time when if you wrote by that structure and the reader at any production company could recognize the structure, they just threw the script over their shoulder because everybody did it for a long time.
Yeah.
And then Story by McKee. Okay. Story by McKee, by the way, I feel is a very advanced screenwriting book. And part of the reason I mentioned that is that as an actor, you need to learn the foundation of how to be an actor before you're ever going to be able to walk into an advanced acting class and be able to understand what that's about. Whereas, actors are really ambitious. I just want to go to. So I believe all of the arts are that way, right? I believe you should start with a simple book and build your way up to which is Story by McKee as an example of a complex screenwriting book, because he's talking about things that if you don't know how to write already, it goes right over your head. You might think you intellectually get it, but you don't get it yet. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing when you work with a very advanced acting instructor or director, or you're doing a really complex piece of theater, right? Like a first-year actor shouldn't be doing Ibsen or Chekhov. That's going to go right over their head. They're not going to understand it. But once you get to that place and you put in the time and you go, oh, now I'm ready for this. Because I really believe that that a lot of writers get scared off by reading really complex books like I did at the beginning and go, well, this is insane. Mm-hmm. So you got to read something that just makes screenwriting feel like it's not brain surgery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And let's do the same thing with contests. You mentioned that you enter a bunch of contests. Some of them are giving feedback. Maybe list your top, 2 or 3, 4 contests that you think are worthwhile.
I think everybody knows the top contest is Nichols. There's no question about that.
Yep.
It's also a very hard contest, isn't it?
Yeah,
I've only entered that a couple times, to be honest. I often don't think I have anything worthy of it, which is very weird, right? Mm-hmm. I think the farthest I've ever gotten is the quarterfinal thing or whatever. Page is the other one. This is, kind of number 2. And then it falls into this big, vast vat of opinions. Austin is great. Some people like Scriptapalooza, some don't. Some like Script Pipeline, some don't. Some like Screencraft, some don't. I don't know the answer. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the thing I want everybody to remember is when you submit your screenplay, if you win the contest, it doesn't mean that you're the greatest writer in the world. Conversely, if you don't even get to the quarterfinals, it doesn't mean your screenplay's garbage. Mm-hmm. It's somebody's opinion. What you need to do is you need to just take that information and go, why didn't it resonate? How did I miss? And I will say that as somebody that has now been a reader in something, man, I completely understand the first page and first 10-page thing, how people are obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. If I read a boring first 5 pages, I've already predetermined in my brain how bad the rest is going to be. So even if you become a genius by page 20, you're hard pressed to kind of turn my opinion around.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, for sure. So let's now talk about the once you had the script done. So you've written the script, you've done your development process. What were those next steps to start to raise the money? Did you have some producer contacts? Did you go out and just raise it, family and friends? Did you have some, venture capitalists? Maybe talk about that process a little bit, because I know there's a lot of screenwriters that would like to potentially produce their own film.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would tell everybody, and you've heard it a million times, make your first movie, unless you're getting money from an outside source, like a production company, some sort of real financing, which then that's a different beast altogether. But for those of us that are going to do it the way I did, which is raising money from essentially family and friends, and what ended up happening is it started family and friends, and then people I didn't know started showing up. Mm-hmm. I heard you're making a movie, and they wanted to invest in it. And the way it all started is I sat down and I wrote a script that I knew I could make for an affordable price. I knew I could do it. So I started sharing it with friends I knew that had a little bit of extra dough, and they loved it. They got excited about it. And they go, hey, this is a lot of fun. This is going to be super cool. And so I got little bits of money from different places. My wife and I don't recommend this to everybody, but my wife and I looked at my wife at one point when we were going to make the movie, because we actually had raised. So when I say raised money, I got promised money, right? Mm-hmm. I then went and bought because we shot the movie in New York and Thailand. I went and bought all the plane tickets to Thailand on my credit cards. And the day before we were supposed to leave, none of my money had shown up. And I called my best friend, who was one of my investors, and I was like, bro, I'm leaving tomorrow. I need the money really badly to make this movie. Otherwise, I'm going to be flying everybody to Thailand for a vacation. And when I landed in Thailand, the money was in my account. It wasn't there when I left. Huh. So I got very lucky to have some very good friends. But ultimately, then other people started to show up, and they wanted to invest in it. And I looked at my wife before we went, and I said, listen, babe, one of two things is going to happen. She goes, okay, what are these two things? I said, well, we're either going to make a couple $1 million bucks, or we're going to go bankrupt. she said, well, what about breaking even? I was like, I'm not interested in breaking even. That's no fun. And I thought I was joking at the time, but I literally was like, I think this is exactly what I was setting out to do without knowing it. Mm-hmm. And so I raised the money. We invested my own money in it. After the movie was made, I had to raise more money to finish it. And then there was also just things that come up. Most people like myself don't consider marketing at all. Mm-hmm. And for me, what I realized after I had the film in the can, I got it put together. Now, here's another thing. The one thing that all of us indie sort of grassroots filmmakers have on our side is time. You're not in a rush. If you're in a rush, I don't know why, because there's no production company barking down your back unless you have that money, and then you're not what I'm talking about. But for people that did it the way I did, I had finished a version of the film that I didn't work. And I had people telling me, just put it out and move on, put it out and move on, and I didn't. I found another editor to finish it with me, and I spent another year and a half finishing it. And by the time I finished it, I had something I was very proud of. And I had to do a couple more days of reshoots and all that. And I also had to get some more money to make it work the way I wanted it to. But that's the one piece of advice I would give everybody. Take time. And when you have a movie, if you have a movie you're not completely satisfied with, set it aside for a month. Come back to it, figure out how to make it work, and make it work. Put in the time to figure it out. Because I believe storytelling, as a storyteller, we can figure out a way to make it work out. It just sometimes will take that extra amount of time and money. And, then when I got to the marketing place, I realized how important it was. For me, one of the things that everybody discounts is the movie's trailer. That was my biggest investment of the entire film. And when I say that, I mean single investment was the trailer. Because I knew it would open doors for me in terms of people watching the film. And if you'll put a link on here, I believe, right, Ashley?
Yep, sure.
People can watch the trailer and check it out. The company that made the trailer was I found there's a thing called the Golden Trailer Awards, which is the Academy Awards of movie trailers. So I was sitting in New York. I used to live in New York. I was sitting in New York at a coffee shop, and I was like, I'm just going to start calling these people. Maybe they'll make my trailer for me. And I was getting people that were like, we only work with studios. Or like very condescendingly, our trailers start at 50,000. And I was like, okay, I got to go. But I found 3 companies that were like willing to negotiate and talk, and still way out of my budget. So I befriended a couple of these guys and had conversations that lasted a couple months with them. And got them to come down. And literally the people I hired were like, we'll give you 3 weeks. You're going to get this many versions of it. We'll do it for your price, only under these constraints. And they kicked out a really, really, really awesome trailer. So there was a point when I first started pedaling, I could get anybody to watch the movie. Because all they would do is watch the trailer and go, wow, this is nuts. Unfortunately, in hindsight, I think the trailer actually might sell the movie as something it's not. Because really, the Land of Smiles is a suspense thriller. It really is. The trailer comes across more like an action horror film almost. That's really high tempo and crazy all the time when it's not. They just did a really good job of making it.
Yeah, for sure. So what was your pitch when you're bringing on these investors, the friends, the family, the friends of friends? What is your pitch to them? Is it an ROI? Hey, man, you put in this many dollars and you're going to get this many dollars out. Were there some other actors? You said you gave them roles. How did you go about pitching them and convincing them? Because just like you said yourself, you're either going to make a lot of money. There's also a chance you lose everything. So how do you sort of approach somebody when you're trying to get them to, and invest is probably a very loose term in something like this.
But not the way I did it, bro. I developed a pitch packet. It was like, I think it was 8 or 10 pages, beautiful. I didn't have money to make it, so I employed one of my good buddies to do it, and he did an awesome job, and it looked amazing. But no, I did the research. I found movies that were like the movie I was making, and I said, these are the movies that are like, the Blair Witch, those stories, those Blair Witch paranormal things that happened, right? And I said, look, this is what could happen. And I wasn't lying, because it could happen. It's a legitimate thing. And to be honest, at the time, I believed that's what's going to happen with me. I was like, we're going to make this movie for nothing, and we're going to turn around, well, nothing, loosely say, and we're going to turn around and we're going to now sell it for $100 million. You know what I mean? We're going to the pitch was the way I sold it was the way I believed in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the truth of the upside of a movie that you make for less than, $1 million is that there is a big upside. Conversely, the really hard part in today's market is it's inundated with movies. There's so many movies made because, as I'm discussing this, there's a kid in Nashville making a movie on his iPhone with his buddies. He's 12 years old. And when you go to AFM to try and get people to look at your movie, he's there too. So how do they know the difference?
Yeah. So had you been to Thailand on some sort of a shoot, like as an actor or something? Like, how did you know it would even be possible to go do Guerilla? Like, I don't know, like, what the permit situation is. I don't know, are there laws? Like, I just don't know how any of that works. So I would be very hesitant to kind of go off on that. How did you just figure out all that sort of Thailand filmmaking stuff?
I was in Thailand for 2 months on a vacation, traveled all around, and part of the way this whole thing came to fruition is I woke up one morning I was staying in this beach cabana on a little island in southern Thailand, walk outside, Water's in front of me. It's like one of the most gorgeous beaches I've easily ever been on in my life, right? And I was sitting there and I was like, man, I would watch somebody eat a bowl of Cheerios on this beach for at least 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, it's so beautiful here. This is not rocket science. And so part of what I was also thinking as I was thinking this, I was like, man, the setting here is insane. It's gorgeous. So when I got back from that trip, that was the trip when I decided I was going to be a screenwriter, right? I started trying to write films for Thailand. So Land of Smiles is the 4th full feature I wrote for Thailand. The first 3 are lining bird cages somewhere in, California. But I finally figured out something that I could do there because I just really wanted to tell a story there. Part of it was the aesthetic of the actual country. Part of it was the people of the country. Land of Smiles is the actual nickname of Thailand because the people are so friendly. And part of it was because I thought to myself, I was like, the people aren't really hell-bent and uptight in a lot of ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If they see a bunch of young people out there, which our whole crew is young, making a movie together, they're not going to come to you and ask for $1 million. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But let's also be honest, you got to have strategy in how you do it. The way we shot it was strategy. We used we shot in New York on the Red, but we didn't bring a Red to Thailand. It's too big. Mm-hmm. I had a friend who got shut down shooting on a Red in Thailand, trying to do that. So we used the Mark III. It was the creme de la creme at the time, and that's not an intimidating camera to build out. Even with a big cinema lens on it, it's not intimidating, right? Mm-hmm. And I also wrote the film strategically with this in mind. And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that the film is what I wrote. There was a knife fight that didn't happen. It was supposed to happen in a nightclub. That didn't happen. The day before we were going to do it, I was like, well, I don't know how I'm staging a knife fight in a club. That's not going to happen at all. So you'll see, if you ever see the film, you'll see that the knife fight turned into a very subtle moment where I actually acted in the film too because I needed to save money on another actor, where a character doesn't pull a knife as much as flash the knife. A very subtle version because the scene might or might not have happened in a live club with people just hanging out. You know what I mean? I'm not recommending any of this to anyone, by the way.
Yeah.
And lastly, the thing is that you have to know is you have to be true to yourself. I'm an adventurous soul. I love to do things that aren't possible. So if you tell me it's not possible, I'm like, sweet, that's probably why I got into this business. Mm-hmm. And so part of my thing was people were telling me what I was trying to do was not going to work. It's not possible. And that alone meant I had to do it. So there I was.
And so what does your crew look like on something like this? Did you just have like a DP and a sound guy and this maybe a PA? Like what did the crew actually look like?
Skeleton crew, bro. Skeleton. So you have, I had a DP. And he had his assistant who was essentially a cinematographer as well, like very talented guy. And they worked as a team. We ran 2 cameras at all time. Sound guy and hair and makeup, special effects, all that. And then my actors, we only had one person who was just solely an actor, which was our lead. My wife was one of the other actors who was also a producer. One of my best friends was the other actor who I wrote the part for, and he was also a pseudo producer, but also just he would do everything that needed to be done kind of guy. And then there was me, who was the writer, director, producer, actor, and I got up before everybody every day. Spent an hour and a half rewriting scenes, going through footage, realizing what we needed to reshoot. Skeleton. I mean, the entire thing was, I think there was 9 of us.
And you just barrel into the club. The 2 guys, the 2 DPs got cameras, and people are just dancing, having a good time, and you're just over there shooting your scene.
We would set them up in ways that was very strategic as well, right? Mm-hmm. You sit down and you're as a group and you're having drinks for real, and then you put a camera on sticks there, you set the scene up, and you just go with it. Listen, the hardest part of the whole thing was sound. I'm not going to lie to you about that. And that I had some magicians in post that just saved me, right? But I also was strategy. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what it was like. So I didn't put any really heavy talking scenes in a nightclub. I'm not an idiot, because how are you going to do that, right?
Yeah.
And there's a few montage sort of bits that are just eye candy, because I wanted to get the eye candy. And there's some things there was one thing that was a scene that turned into more of a montage type thing, because the actual scene itself couldn't unfold under the circumstances. Oh, with the punches, man. That's. My thing was too, like, nobody was going to give me the opportunity to make a movie. Nobody was going to finance a movie, no matter what I did. It wasn't in the cards for me. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do this myself, and that's what I ended up doing. And in the end, to be completely honest, an example is I was never going to do film festivals with this movie. This movie was strictly to be sold. So I finished the movie. I started shopping it to distributors. The information I started hearing from distributors, like a lot of your listeners have heard or will hear, is the minimum fees and all these other things that come up that they're going to, and all of a sudden you're going, oh my God, like, the movie's got to make $150,000 before I see a buck. Like, this is nuts. So I said, there's no benefit. Like, I realized right away the financial benefit might not be there. So I said, okay, the ship has already sailed. The money's been spent. I don't know if I'm recouping the money, so I need to avert my plan from getting rich, because I don't think that's what this is going to be anymore. I'm still going to try and do everything I can to get my money back. But I said, maybe the better way to go down that road is to actually see if I can do anything in the film festivals. So I stopped. I paused everything. I told distributors that I was holding on to the movie for another year, and I started submitting to festivals. And it ended up in a ton of festivals, but ultimately I ended up winning like 31 awards. Wow. And that was the thing that propelled it when I went back to distributors. Now I had that trailer that I told you about, and I go, well, and here's the list of awards that it's won. Whoa, what? Now everybody wants to know more about this particular movie, right? And it's opened doors professionally that it wouldn't have opened otherwise, because it critically did really well, right? So financially, the benefit might not end up being mine. I'm not going to make millions of dollars on the movie, but I found a way to help my career in the end, if that makes sense. No, absolutely. So what advice would you have then for people trying to break into this business? Obviously, you've just gone out there and just shot your own movie. Would you recommend that as a good first step for people? What do you think is a good first step for that guy that's just getting into the business? Depends how old they are. To be honest, I mean, if I was going to, and I give advice to actors all the time because I mentor a lot of them, but in terms of young filmmakers, is if you're really young and you're not even out of high school yet, I would gear my entire existence toward getting into one of the biggest and best film schools in the world. And this is where it gets tricky, because some people disagree with me. I wouldn't be going to that film school for the quote-unquote film education. You're going to get a good one, but that wouldn't be the reason I went there. You're buying relationships. You're buying a membership to a club. And you're buying membership to a club and that club will help you for the rest of your life. I'm talking about AFI, USC. I'm talking about the big ones, right? That would be my advice for really young filmmakers. Like, that's because when you get into those clubs, man, they help. They really help. And the proof's in the pudding, right? And for people that are a little bit older, I would say it just depends on what route you want to go. Like, how do you want to do this thing? Because as a lot of you might know, the contest route, I mean, I'm sitting here, I've won a bunch of contests as a screenwriter. I've been a finalist and even more. None of them have really provided me with, some of them have provided me opportunities with managers and things that have been wonderful, but none of them have opened that magical door. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so unless it's Nichols or maybe Page, but Nichols is really the only one I see that opens that magical door. So you can try that route. But for me, it's about doing it. So I would start with short films. Please don't do the thing where your first film's a feature. That's just like, it's such a bad idea. Because I didn't make a ton too. I think I made 5 or 6 short films before I made a feature, but my amount of learning in those 5 or 6 was immense. And it helped me go, okay, I'm starting to understand how this process works. I think I've got a grasp on it. So make a couple short films for nothing. I've made a short film for a couple $100. I made a short film for $22,000. I wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't recommend that at all. It's up to you what you want to do, but you just got to figure out, like, I need to start making things. So you start making things. Grab your friends, grab your cameras. The other thing the advice I give every single filmmaker, and this is for young people, this is also for your 20, 30, 40-year-old filmmakers out there. Do not be scared to approach established actors. People are terrified. I watch more movies that fail because they have awful actors. If I had $1 for every time I've seen a really cool script get murdered by bad acting, I would just be retired. I'd be done. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, filmmakers don't think they can approach real actors. Take this piece of advice, everyone. I can't even tell you how many. I have hundreds and hundreds of professional actor friends. All of them are willing to give a little bit of their time, a week, maybe 2 weeks, to a project if the script is good. And what you'll have is the result you'll have is this magical moments in front of your camera that you couldn't have got otherwise. Mm-hmm. So do not be afraid to approach those actors. And ultimately, make your first movie for as cheap as possible.
Yeah. How do you find those actors, all these actor friends of yours? You're talking about just like going on IMDb and kind of drilling down. And obviously you're not going after the name actors, but, you know, guys that have solid resumes, and just contact their agent, maybe try and contact them directly.
Okay, so first of all, I've been in the business for a long time, so I have access to actors that other people don't. So that's obviously that's not fair. It's going through the rate of contacting agents and all that. You're going to have to be then a SAG. You're going to have to be SAG and registered and all those other wonderful things. And that means you'll have a little bit more money to spend, right? If you can do that, great, do it. Like, don't be afraid to hear no. I mean, if you're going to go to one of the biggest actors in the world, the odds are you're never going to get it. You're not going to. You'll talk to the agent's assistant, and that'll be the end. But it doesn't matter. Try it. But if they're farther down IMDb, you know, if they're lower than 5,000 or 10,000, you'd be surprised if you might be able to get one of them to do it for a couple $100 a day for a week, just because they want to do the project because it's awesome. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the thing I did though for mine was I use Actors Access, and all of my actor friends hate this story, but it's true. I put 4 roles on Actors Access. And I think I had 4,300 submissions.
Wow.
And it was for a film that was going abroad and all these other things, which was exciting, I'm sure. But at the same time, I had so much talent at my fingertips. I didn't know what to do with. I just had to go through the process of going through 4,300 people. And I found my lead actress through that, who's since been on, you know, she's been a series regular on TV shows, and she has a wonderful career, and she's an insanely talented young woman. I just happened to find her before everybody else did. Mm-hmm. And that was through Actors Access. But I think the reason I'm telling you this is that I think a lot of people come up with a film idea and then they hire their neighbor, or they have a cousin that took an acting class once. Mm-hmm. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're recipe for disaster. Mm-hmm. Get real actors, you guys. It'll change your films. It'll make them so much better. And the actors are hungry and they want to work. Trust me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's very, very sound advice. It really it makes it feel like a student film when you get bad acting in something, and it really just separates it from the pack. So what I just like to end the interviews, what have you seen lately that you thought was great? A TV show, movie, watching something on Netflix? I'm just always curious to hear what other people are watching that they think is really awesome.
What's the horror film that, was it A Quiet Place?
Yeah, Quiet Place. I have not seen it yet, but yeah.
Stop it. You know why I love it, and everybody should, it's like, it is so unique. The screenplay has almost no dialogue. I mean, I think there may be 10 or 15 lines of dialogue in the entire movie. So the guys who wrote it, if you read the story, they were getting laughed out of Hollywood after they wrote this thing, because it's like, what is this? It's a 60-page screenplay. But what they also did is they wrote something that was insanely unique, and it was their own voice, right? And then he did a wonderful job. Krasinski did a wonderful job with the film. I was just very, very, very impressed. Mm-hmm. So that was one movie that grabbed my attention. I also watched a lot of indie film. And you know what? I'm going to plug a movie I'm watching right now, because I'm watching this indie film on Netflix, and I found it to be so charming. And when I say indie film, you guys, I'm not saying the movie wasn't made for money, because the truth is it probably was. It's called Tramps, and it's on Netflix. Never heard of it. And it's just a lovely film, so simple. So simple. You could shoot this movie for nothing. I mean, I don't know. They might have shot it for $5 million. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I was just, my advice for everybody is to watch everything. Because I often find, too, that a lot of times the bigger budget stuff is underwhelming, because whatever it is that they're doing is like, there's too much, they put on the kid gloves, right? Everything's so safe and sanitized. You know, there was that movie years ago, was it called Monsters, that was shot in Mexico? The Monster.
Yeah. And the guy went on to direct one of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I mean, but like the movie you watch and you're like, word, this guy just came out of his head. This world is so exciting, you know? Mm-hmm. And the thing I would tell everybody, like, not to back up, but to go, anybody that watches Land of Smiles is just like the experience they have, that they can feel the energy that went into it. I have a lot of energy, but they can feel the energy of Thailand, like the visceral, like gritty world we were in. And like, you got to be on it. That is also who I am. It's like a very passionate, colorful world, right? And it just came through because I didn't get it right. If anything, I got it wrong because I made it my own. But what I did do is I was like, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be honest to myself. And this is who I am right now today. So that would be another thing I'd tell everybody. Like, I feel like Tramps is an example of a movie that's authentic. There was a movie called White Girl, I think a couple years ago. She's also gone on to have a nice career, this young woman. And it's White Girl, White. It's just this really edgy New York film, and you're like, man, this is so authentic. Like, this is whoever made this. This is them. This is part of them. And so I would avoid anybody that's out there. I would watch as many indie films as you can, and you'll start to recognize the ones you gravitate towards. I gravitate towards the grittier ones. And also just don't let anybody tell you how to get it right, because ultimately that's their version of the story, not yours.
Yeah, for sure. So how can people see Land of Smiles? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like, when it will hit iTunes, Amazon, that sort of stuff?
Depends what country you're in, right? So right now I believe it's on Amazon. So in Southeast Asia, in all of Asia, the movie I believe is called A Game of Clowns. Yeah, a title that I absolutely don't love, but that's fine. I didn't decide that. It did fine. So that's what it is there. I don't know what it is in Europe. It's in various countries in Europe already on different platforms. In Canada, it's on Super Channel. It is called A Land of Smiles. I believe in the U.S. it is on, I believe it's already on iTunes, but I know it's on Amazon as Land of Smiles as well. In the trailer you'll see on any platform, my distributor actually cut his own trailer because, again, I cut a trailer that's fast and exciting, but part of when it didn't work for selling the movie. He needed it's going to sound ridiculous, but he needed a much simpler trailer to sell the movie that just outlines the story. So that would be, and there's another version that's going to come out that's going to be called American Tourist Nightmare in Thailand. I'm not laughing at myself. I'm just laughing at how things have become. But you know what?
Where is that going to be released?
I don't know, bro. I just know that it's going to happen. I don't know. At this point, I just kind of like, I don't know, man. If you keep looking at IMDb, you'll become privy. And if you follow me on any of the social media stuff, I'll always let you know if and when how it's rolling out and what platform, sort of thing. Like as much as I know, because sometimes I don't even know.
Yeah, perfect. And that's a good segue into maybe you can mention your different social media handles, Twitter, Facebook, anything you're comfortable sharing, and I'll put those in the show notes so people can click over and find you.
Yeah, it's my name, Bradley, Bradley, and then Stryker, Stryker. Just look up my name and you'll find me on everything. Okay. And I urge all of the filmmakers that listen to this. You guys, by the way, I've listened to your podcast for 2 years, maybe I listen to it at the gym.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you. Yeah.
A lot of the frustration of the filmmakers helps me lift weights, or the glory stories inspire me to run a little farther.
Exactly.
But I've been listening to it, and one of the things that I urge all people to do, like especially filmmakers and whatnot, like don't be afraid to contact me and ask me questions about stuff. I mean, I'm not going to be able to devote thousands of hours to anybody, but like I really love the process of making film and writing scripts and everything. And if you have any questions, like I have no problem sending you back a quick answer about things. And because I really believe for all of us in this community that aren't yet, established on some bigger level, like you got to look out for each other. And that's something I urge filmmakers to do, is look out for each other more, because I feel like people feel like they're in competition with each other. Go to AFM one time and you'll realize you're in competition with too many people to care. So just support each other, and that's what, if I can help anybody with that, reach out. I'll do what I can do, but like support each other. That's really important, man. Anybody that's chosen to be in the arts for a living, you've got to support each other, because it's not an easy life, man.
Yeah, for sure. And we can end it on that note. I think that's excellent advice. So Bradley, I really appreciate you coming on talking with me for an hour. Thank you very much, and I really wish you luck with this film, and have you on again in your when you get done with your next film.
Absolutely, brother, and good luck with all your stuff as well.
Perfect. Hey, thank you, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right, later, bro.
Bye.
I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays that they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. I launched this service at the beginning of this year, and we've already started to see some success stories. You can check out SYS podcast episode 222 with Steve Deering. He was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. You can learn more about all of this by going to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database that I just mentioned, along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. Those services include the monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads sites, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, they're looking for features, TV and web series pilots, all types of different projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you can get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. Also in the forum are all the recorded screenwriting classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to all of those as well. The classes cover every part of the writing process, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you would like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing actor and also writer-director James Morosini. He gives a very candid interview about the process of him making the film, Threesome Thing. It's a comedy about three people that have a very awkward threesome and kind of where that all leads. He's a real artist and very open about the whole process, and not just the nuts and bolts. We certainly spend some time talking about that, just the nuts and bolts of producing a super low budget film, but we also talk about sort of the emotional ups and downs. And this is a big part of indie filmmaking. I've tried to share some of my own ups and downs with The Pinch. Things can get, just again, emotionally draining, and kind of just wondering, where does it all lead? So we talk about that a lot. And as I said, James is just very open about it. It's not something that I hear a lot talked about. Everybody is talking about, the script or the casting or, what camera you're going to use. And that's a big part of indie filmmaking. But another big aspect, as I said, is sort of these emotional ups and downs that you go through as you're producing the film, as you finish the film, as you get rejected from film festivals, maybe you get into some festivals. It's just a very emotionally draining process. And as I said, James is a real artist and very sort of in touch with these feelings. And we talk about that quite a bit. And I think it was a very candid and interesting interview. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.